A reading from 1 Samuel, chapter 1, verses 4 through 20. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to his wife Peninnah, and also to her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. Her rival used to provoke her severely to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah said to her, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more than 10 sons?" After they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh, Hannah rose and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. She made this vow, "O Lord of hosts, if only you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazirite until the day of his death. He shall not drink neither wine nor intoxicants, and no razor shall touch his head." As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine." But Hannah answered, "No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all this time." Then Eli answered, "Go in peace. The God of Israel grant the petition you have made him." And she said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." Then the woman went to her quarters, ate, and drank with her husband, and her countenance was sad no longer. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah. Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. In due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I have asked him of the Lord." The sixth grade version of myself sits outside the school, leaning glumly against a pillar, staring at a blank page of my notebook. The assistant principal comes out the school doors and sees me. Assistant principal, "How are you doing, Trey?" Me, sighs. "Not great. I can't figure this thing out, and I think I might have a fever." Assistant principal, "Trey, when people ask you, 'How are you doing?' they don't really want to know how you are doing. You're supposed to just say, 'Fine,' or 'Good.'" Me, baffled silence. That scene happened back in 1998, but as with a lot of things that confuse me, I remember it clearly. I stayed at school late because I had Odyssey of the Mind practice. I got tasked with writing the script for our competition skit while the rest of the team built some contraption. I didn't know about things like depression and writer's block, much less that I suffered from both. I couldn't get the script going, and I felt down about it. My conversation with the AP served as one of a number in an endless series of indications that the world didn't care that I felt depressed and would rather not hear about it. I mentioned on a recent podcast that in the 1990s and early 2000s, we were all liars because we all followed the correct social script and declared ourselves fine. Things have shifted in our culture, but back then, no one talked about mental health. We knew words like crazy, bipolar, and on Valium. But that a double-digit percentage of the population suffered from something real never entered the public discourse. Instead, I got told that no one wanted to hear about it, and learned, over time, to not talk about it, to paper over the cracks with as much forced cheerfulness as I could muster. I'd been this way for as long as I can remember. The kid weirdly sad at theoretical happy occasions, or suddenly not wanting to go to the theme park that I had been longing to go to for weeks. I still get teased by my loving found family for being the only person who could be sad at a carousel, or often walking moodily ahead of the group. We have a growing collection of Trey walks alone pictures because my mood drops in the middle of a fun outing. In my life now, I know that I suffer from an actual condition, that I can receive treatment, that the people around me accept me for it, and that it sits at the core of my wiring. As a kid, I was just the problem child who couldn't portray the right emotions at the right times. One shouldn't play armchair psychologist for major biblical and religious figures. We probably shouldn't diagnose Ezekiel with schizophrenia, Paul, John the Baptist, and John Wesley with Asperger's, and Jesus with a high level of introversion. Think about it. Jesus constantly seeks a break from the crowd. We get multiple accounts of him trying and failing to escape. No extrovert desires that much of a break. However, if Hannah told her story at a depression support group, the whole crowd would say, "Same, girl, same." Hannah lives a reasonably good life for women in the ancient world. She has one of the few healthy marriages in all of Scripture. Her husband feels for her and legitimately tries to help her by giving her an extra portion out of love. He also asks the question that every spouse of a depressed person must wonder at some point, as related in 1 Samuel 1:8. Her husband, Elkanah, said to her, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more than 10 sons?" She is a caring spouse who chooses to love her more rather than reject her because of her inability to bear children. However, she still feels the weight of the emptiness, which Peninnah helps drive home at every possible opportunity, compounding the suffering and making it unescapable. She then does what every good church kid does when they hurt and need relief. She goes to the temple. Eli, the ever-reliable, lets her down in a way that a lot of people who turn to faith for help in the midst of mental health crisis would recognize, as related in verses 12 through 14. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine." Her pain and depression get mistaken for immorality and intemperance. She couldn't possibly have a valid reason for such behavior. She should get it together and act the way that one should at the temple. Even as Eli misunderstands, God knows all. Even as society rejects or never quite empathizes, God never lacks such clarity. God answers Hannah's prayer, establishing the depth of God's knowledge. This carries hope for all who hurt and feel unseen. God sees. No one ever truly suffers alone or unrecognized, because the Lord of the universe knows only realities, not humanity's clouded judgment. I resonate with the story of Hannah and its implications for the nature of God. I know well the struggle of trying to shake a seemingly unshakable weight, while everyone around you either feels powerless to help or seems determined to make that weight even more crushing. I used to think of God's omniscience as merely God's perfect knowledge of all the ways that I messed up. I missed the part where it meant that I always had someone who actually understood the reality of my life, forever fleeing from the avalanche of my own emotions. I've reached a place in my life where I know that I don't suffer alone. Millions of people suffer from depression, and I am blessed to have people in my life that I can always turn to. However, I find comfort knowing that I was never alone to begin with.